Thank you for joining us today for another great episode of Clean Money Podcast. Today we continue our series Tales from the Dark Side of Real Estate, where my brother Jesse and I and our guests will share some of the more interesting stories of our adventures in this business. The kind of stories that are rarely shared unless you're on a campfire or probably at a bar someplace. Because as you know, life is not all sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns, especially in our realm where we like to buy very distressed, very poorly managed properties. And boy, do we have some stories to tell. So I hope you enjoy this episode. If you do, like, subscribe, and leave some comments and share some of your crazy stories if you've been in real estate. And we'd love to hear them and even invite you on the pod to share your story with the audience. So today we're going to talk about a large complex that we were looking at. It was a foreclosure. We had it under contract, buying it from foreclosure auction. The seller had committed fraud, or not the seller. The seller was the state or the bank. It was a Fannie Mae foreclosure. The seller was a syndicator, committed fraud, was being prosecuted, had fled the country. I think was living in Europe or somewhere. They were trying to extradite him back. Big mess. The property had been in foreclosure for over a year and a half or something, and it was just a giant mess. But we're coming to buy this 260 unit apartment complex for like $8 million. It was a steal, absolute steal. It was also about 50% occupied, right up our alley and about 10 minutes away from another property we had. And so this
is the one that the FBI were after him because he took all the CapEx dollars and he just put it in his pocket and took off, right?
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's one way to, doing stuff like that is short-term money. This project they had, I think they bought it for like $6 million or something. They could have fixed it up and sold it for 20. He would have made a lot more money doing what was right than doing what was wrong and filling his pockets and running. And apparently he had 8 or 10 other projects out there. So interesting, super interesting story, that part. And then now we're going to get to the even more fun part. So this beautiful property, older construction. We were there doing some doing our due diligence, getting ready for the purchase, and walking this property, 260 units. There's a lot of units. There's a lot of damaged units. There was some weird things that we saw in some of those units where people had basically like tattoos everywhere, but just drawings from the floors, the walls, the ceilings. Some of the most bizarre units I think I've ever seen. And we have plenty of pictures. Happy to share those if anyone's interested, but just crazy, crazy stuff. So we're going on this property, and the very center of the property, there's a cottage, and the cottage is the office, but it looks like a German cottage. And the original owner was a German farmer who built this cottage. And then later on, they came and built an apartment complex and kept the cottage. Now is when things get really weird. So we go into this building, this cottage, and it's really beautiful. I used to live in Germany. It's very quaint, very familiar to me. But Jesse, talk a little bit about what we found in the cottage.
Yeah. So you remember being beautiful, but the apartments themselves were average, a little run down, what we like to fix up, right? But this Hansel and Gretel, this beautiful cottage in the middle was absolutely gorgeous. So you follow the bread trail in, right? You walk inside, opens up, beautiful wood. You see this big balcony above you. Just gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Well, we found out that actually that balcony hanging over was a few bedrooms, which is interesting, a few rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Started asking the management some questions like, what do you... Who lives up there? What's going on? I said, oh, no, this used to be a brothel. Okay. And then girls have come out, hang over the balcony. And I guess you did some negotiations and you went upstairs. I don't.
Yeah. I guess bringing the red light district from Germany, and that's how they kind of operated their property.
Yeah. One heck of a farm.
Maybe that helped occupancy. I don't know. They got
Yeah.
max rents at that place. Um,
Uh, yeah, I wish that was the whole story. That's interesting by itself. But what we found downstairs was actually more interesting. Do you remember what was down there?
yeah, so we go downstairs into the basement, and it's kind of dark and dank. And we walk up, and there's this. So there's fireplace upstairs, and downstairs there's this massive fireplace, but it's got this door on it, and you open it up, and it's the perfect size for a body. And it, the way that it worked was the exact same way that a crematorium worked, like you've seen on any of those shows. So it was they had a crematorium in their basement. Uh,
Yeah.
if that
Yeah.
doesn't give you the hibby jibbies, brothel upstairs, if the negotiations go wrong, I guess you're going downstairs into the crematorium. Uh,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So I asked a lot of questions, of course, because like this is wild. And the management said that they don't go downstairs. Why don't you go downstairs? Good place for storage. There's plenty of space down there for, I guess, the people in line waiting to use the crematorium. And they said that it's haunted, that they would hear things down there, that the maintenance guys refuse to go down there. Yeah. So,
yeah, and
so we're
you go downstairs, and it just felt wrong. Like it just felt wrong. And then looking at that thing, I remember we're all sitting there staring at it, and I said, "Is that a crematorium?" And they're like, "I think so." I'm like, we're all like, "Okay, let's go back upstairs." And we ended up not doing that deal. We ended up backing out and walking away. There was probably $4 or $5 million worth of work at that project, but a crematorium.
Yeah, that was definitely an interesting one.
Yeah. Hopefully the new owners like destroyed that or did something with it, but weird. So upstairs brothel, downstairs crematorium. If you have a story that beats that, please put it in the comments. We would love to hear it. And please, if you like this episode, like, subscribe. We're going to continue sharing just the most bizarre stories that we've had, and we've got tons of them coming. So please join us again for our next episode of the Clean Money Podcast, and we'll talk to you again next time.